You are walking through a crowded intersection in downtown Manhattan. The sky is clear, the morning is quiet, and a cool breeze carries the sounds of traffic, footsteps, and coffee shop chatter. Then, without warning, it happens. People stop mid-stride, frozen. Some scream. Others stagger into walls, into traffic, onto the pavement. Cars crash. Horns blare. A delivery man collapses face first into the sidewalk, clutching at his eyes, shouting that he cannot see. You blink and realize your vision is dimming too, as if someone is slowly turning off the world. Panic sets in as shadows thicken, and the sun itself fades from your sight. In under a minute, the city has become a symphony of collisions, sirens, and terrified voices, lost in absolute darkness. You do not know what caused it. You cannot see who is crying for help. You cannot even find your own hands. Something in the air has stolen your sight, and it is spreading faster than fear. Welcome, traveler. You have just arrived in the year 2029, a near future where a silent catastrophe has transformed the human experience forever. This is not a nuclear war, nor an artificial intelligence rebellion, nor even a viral pandemic in the traditional sense. This is something far more insidious, something no one could have predicted. An airborne phenomenon, possibly biological, chemical, or even nanotechnological in origin, has begun sweeping across the globe, triggering immediate and irreversible blindness in anyone who breathes it in. Within hours, the world descends into chaos. Planes fall from the sky. Highways become death traps. Entire cities are swallowed in confusion, panic, and silence. And the worst part, no one can see it coming. The event is initially dismissed as a freak occurrence, a localized gas leak, or biological attack, but it spreads fast. From New York to Tokyo, from the deserts of Africa to the icy corners of Scandinavia, there is nowhere left untouched. It moves with the wind. It enters homes through vents, creeps into sealed environments, and crosses oceans in cargo ships and storm clouds. Governments collapse in confusion, unable to organize when even leaders can no longer see. Emergency broadcasts become desperate cries in the dark. Survival becomes a matter of sound, instinct, and trust in total strangers. In this time travel experience, you will witness the downfall of sighted civilization and the birth of something entirely new. You will live the chaos of the first outbreak, feel the terror of being hunted while blind, and experience the rise of societies built entirely without vision. You will see how humanity adapts, how it turns to sound and touch, and how a new order rises from the ashes of the visual world. But this journey is not one you are likely to survive. Because the truth is, unless you were trained to live without seeing, or lucky enough to be immune, the darkness will claim you just like it claimed billions of others. But it all began on a clear morning, when the sky was blue and the world still made sense. Let us return to that moment, to the very first outbreak, and witness how the world changed in a single day. You materialize into the year 2029 on the corner of 8th Avenue and 34th Street in New York City, right outside Penn Station. The street is alive. Yellow taxis speed past. Businessmen clutch coffee cups as they rush across the crosswalk, and street vendors shout over the hum of subway grates. The sun is warm against your skin. Everything feels ordinary, even dull. And then, a subtle shift, a sensation so strange it almost goes unnoticed. A pause in rhythm, a stutter in the song of the city. You feel a tickle in your throat. A woman nearby blinks rapidly and mutters something about the sunlight looking dim. A man stumbles into a traffic cone and gasps, clutching at his face. Within seconds, you see panic ignite in every direction. Screams break the calm. People are collapsing, not from wounds or explosions, but from something invisible, something they cannot understand. You hear a cab slam into a line of parked cars, metal crunching like paper. A cyclist flips over the hood of an Uber and rolls across the pavement. Pedestrians are on the ground, covering their eyes, shouting that they cannot see. A delivery drone plummets from the sky and shatters on the street. You try to blink the strange haze from your own eyes, but your vision dims further, like fog thickening on a window. In 30 seconds, half the crowd is blind. In a minute, you realize your own sight is slipping away. The light is not gone, it is being erased. Not turned off, but stolen. Shapes blur, color vanishes, and then, like a final breath, the world becomes black. You are swallowed in it, drowning in a kind of darkness no sleep ever prepared you for. The sounds explode in importance. Car horns wail endlessly. Glass shatters. Voices plead. Somewhere, someone is already calling for their mother. A primal cry of confusion and terror. You reach for your phone, but cannot see the screen. You shout for help, but no one knows where anyone is. A hand grabs your wrist, then disappears again. There is no orientation, no sky, no ground, only chaos. What you do not yet know is that this scene is being repeated in cities around the world. In hospitals, patients go blind mid-surgery. On planes, pilots lose vision as warning lights scream and autopilot fails. In schools, children scream and stumble, reaching out in the dark for teachers who cannot see them. It is happening everywhere at once, triggered not by a visible event, but by something in the air. Scientists will later debate its origin. Some believe it was released from melting permafrost, a long dormant spore awakened by climate change. Others suspect it is a failed military bioweapon, or a mutation of an airborne virus that attacks the optic nerve. But in this moment, no one knows. There is only terror. You begin to crawl. Hands and knees scrape concrete. The city sounds different now, like it has aged 100 years in a moment. Without vision, the city becomes a blind maze of sharp edges and unpredictable noise. The footsteps of others are no longer reassuring. They are wild, frantic, directionless. You touch a body. It is still warm, breathing, but unconscious or dead. You cannot tell. You call out, but the wind steals your voice. You realize now that this is not a blackout. This is not a trick of the mind. This is not temporary. The world has changed permanently, and it did so in under 5 minutes. Eventually, you find the edge of a building and slide your back against it. From the way the air echoes, you guess you are near an alley. You hear someone crying nearby. You stay quiet. There is a primal instinct to remain unnoticed. Because even in the dark, even when everyone is blind, the city is not empty, and not everyone is coping well. Somewhere nearby, a fight breaks out. You hear punches, flesh against flesh, a crack of bone, then silence, just as fast. The darkness has become a predator's playground. Later that day, the military arrives, but blind as well. Helicopters crash, attempting to land. Tanks are abandoned in intersections. With no visual coordination, any centralized response fails immediately. Some think about sonar, others about AI drones with infrared. but no one has time to act. The media lasts 2 hours longer. Newscasters shout updates blindly. Emergency radios buzz with inconsistent reports. The president issues an audio statement saying the White House is under quarantine. But by then, most people have already lost their sight. Nothing can be done. The blindness is not going away. It has infected the very air we breathe. You survive the first 24 hours by crawling through shattered storefronts, guided by sounds and memory. A kind stranger grabs your hand and leads you to the back of a restaurant where you hide with 10 others. No one speaks much. No one knows who the others are. Food is scavenged by feel. Bottled water is shared. Someone has a lighter, which flicks occasionally, just to check. But no one can see it. The flame exists only in memory now. Time loses meaning. Morning and night are the same. No one dares to leave. Those who do vanish into the black, their screams distant, then gone. You realize something deeper than fear is settling in, a kind of mental unraveling. The human brain is not designed for total blindness, especially not suddenly and not in masses. Some begin to hum to themselves. Others pray out loud constantly. One man laughs until his voice cracks. The air smells of sweat and blood and plastic. Your other senses begin to stretch, reaching for a world that is no longer visible. Sound becomes your map, smell your compass, touch your only proof of existence. But it is not enough, not yet. Outside, the city dies. Skyscrapers burn from fires no one can extinguish. Subways flood as maintenance stops. The East River becomes a graveyard of overturned boats and drowned bodies. Without vision, humanity's grip on technology, order, and structure slips away like a hand losing its grip in the dark. The blindness has become more than a condition. It is an extinction-level event. But what exactly is this invisible terror that has swallowed the world whole? In the next chapter, we descend into the laboratories and research bunkers, where the last sighted footage is analyzed in a desperate attempt to identify the agent of airborne blindness. You are now deep beneath the Swiss Alps, inside a high-security research facility built into a mountain. The corridors are dim, the air sterile, and everything smells of plastic, cold metal, and antiseptic. This is one of the last functioning scientific stations on Earth, equipped with its own oxygen filtration, geothermal power, and autonomous robotics. It was not meant for this crisis, but now it is the last place on Earth where people still retain their sight, because the air inside is isolated, pressurized, and constantly scrubbed. You walk past blast doors that hiss closed behind you and enter a sealed lab where a group of exhausted scientists, some half-blind themselves, are trying to answer the single question burning in every corner of the world. What is stealing our sight? You are brought into the observation chamber, where silent footage plays on a screen. It is the last visual record from a research drone in Buenos Aires, captured seconds before the entire team at Ground Zero lost vision. The camera trembles as the drone flies over a rainforest research site. One by one, the people below stumble, clutching their heads. The drone's lens becomes hazy, the image distorted, until all you see is static. The video ends. A lead scientist looks at you with bloodshot eyes and says, "It is not just biological, it is neurological. Something enters through the lungs, but it finishes its work in the brain. The pathogen, they tell you, is unlike anything seen before. It is not a virus in the traditional sense. It behaves more like a neuroaerosol, suspended in the air in microscopic filaments, no larger than a pollen grain. When inhaled, it passes silently into the lungs, slips into the bloodstream, and targets the occipital lobe, the part of the brain responsible for processing vision. The blindness does not come from damaged eyes. The eyes remain intact. It is the brain that goes dark. And once that part shuts down, it never restarts. Samples gathered from sealed environments show strange biological patterns. The pathogen appears to have a mycelium-like structure, resembling a cross between fungal spores and synthetic particles. Under a microscope, it pulses slowly, almost like it is alive. It does not reproduce through normal cell division. Instead, it multiplies by fractal replication, rapidly branching and embedding itself in organic material. Its origin is a mystery. Some believe it evolved naturally in a hidden biome, perhaps deep in the Amazon, perhaps under ancient ice. But others are convinced it is a man-made creation, possibly a leaked bioweapon or a rogue synthetic experiment gone horribly wrong. What makes the pathogen so lethal is its resistance to traditional containment. It is unaffected by UV light, heat, or radiation. It thrives in both dry and humid environments. It floats on air currents, capable of traveling dozens of kilometers. Standard N95 masks offer no protection. Even full hazmat suits provide only temporary safety. In some cases, the blindness has occurred without any known breach, suggesting that the agent can permeate microscopic gaps in protective layers. Worse, it has no incubation period. Victims go blind within minutes of exposure, and those who attempt to treat them are often affected within the hour. The facility has tried controlled experiments on lab animals using airtight cages and advanced neural monitoring. The results are always the same. The moment the pathogen enters, it activates what looks like a seizure in the visual cortex. Nerve pathways flare up, then go completely silent. Rats stumble, disoriented. Monkeys shriek and press their hands to their eyes. The room goes silent. The scientists sit in stunned horror. There is no antidote. There is no vaccine. They are not even sure it is a disease in the traditional sense. It may be more like a programmed environmental weapon, a signal disguised as a substance. There is one theory, quietly whispered among the researchers, that the pathogen may not be targeting vision at all. One neurologist proposes a radical idea that what we call blindness is only a side effect, and that the real purpose of the pathogen is to sever humans from their reliance on visual reality entirely. It is a philosophical pathogen designed to force a new mode of perception, a forced evolution. But before they can test the theory, communication with their sister lab in Kyoto is lost. The entire team there went dark within 45 minutes of first exposure. A camera drone captured the final moments. Scientists, mid-experiment, suddenly go rigid, drop their instruments, and stumble into walls. One falls into a cryogenic tank. Another shouts a single word before collapsing. Whisper. You begin to understand the depth of the crisis. This is not a disease you can recover from. It is not something you can run from. It is already in the clouds, the oceans, the soil. It is laced into every breath of the unfiltered world. Cities have tried building giant negative pressure domes. They failed. The pathogen penetrates through ventilation shoes, even on pets. It lives on wind and fire. It does not kill directly, but it ends life as we know it. In desperation, governments around the world pour resources into AI-based site substitutes, sonar-driven wearables, and neural implants. None are ready in time. The blindness spreads faster than technology can respond. Satellite imagery shows the entire globe losing light, like watching Earth become a dark marble in space. The only hope now lies in isolation or adaptation, and neither path is sustainable. The lead researcher finally turns to you and says, "You cannot fight what you cannot see, and now you cannot even see yourself." His voice is trembling. In the silence that follows, the facility lights flicker. Somewhere in the air filtration system, a pressure alert beeps once, then twice. Everyone freezes. The scientist's face turns pale. You both realize the nightmare has breached even this sanctuary. As the blindness spreads unchecked, the world outside these bunkers plunges deeper into disarray. What happens to a civilization that loses its vision entirely? In the next section, we step back into the cities to witness the full unraveling of human society when sight becomes extinct. You emerge from the mountain laboratory into what used to be a world of color, direction, and movement. Now it is a soundscape of panic. The air is still. The sky above, though technically bright, might as well be buried in stone. You have no frame of reference, no shadows to follow, no sun to track. The only reality is what your ears can capture and your hands can feel. Civilization, as you knew it, is gone. The cities have not burned down. They have not been bombed. They are still standing, but they are dead, hollowed out, disconnected from every system that once required sight to function. The world has stumbled blindly into its own grave. You walk through a ruined highway interchange in Berlin. The cars are frozen in a chaotic ballet of collisions. Some have mounted curbs. Others have drifted into one another and locked like jaws. Emergency vehicles sit idle, their lights long since drained of power. The sirens are silent now, their final wails echoed endlessly through abandoned neighborhoods in days prior. People who survived the initial outbreak tried to flee, on foot, by bicycle, by crawling, but without sight, few made it far. The overpasses became mass graves. People walked off the edges in confusion. Others were crushed beneath panicked stampedes. You enter a once vibrant neighborhood, following a wall with your fingertips. The air smells of rotting food, gasoline, and sweat. Somewhere nearby, a baby cries endlessly, its parents either gone or too blind and exhausted to reach it. You hear a man sobbing from inside a locked car. He cannot find the door latch. Another is shouting a name repeatedly, begging for someone to answer. You move quietly past, your heart pounding. Even now, you are unsure if silence is safer than compassion. Inside homes, everything is appended. Glass litters floors. Furniture has been overturned. People lived in these places for days before giving up. You see a woman sitting against her refrigerator, humming to herself, surrounded by cans of food she cannot open. The can opener sits 6 inches from her left hand, but she will never find it. Her fingers search the ground methodically, looping in useless circles. In another apartment, you hear a group of survivors arguing about whether it is day or night. They cannot agree, and the tension escalates until one threatens to kill the others if they do not stop talking. You back away. The air feels charged. You have learned quickly that blindness does not dull danger. It only makes it harder to see coming. Civilization begins to fracture along predictable lines. Power plants fail within days. Sighted engineers can no longer operate control panels. Nuclear facilities automatically shut down under failsafes. But others, hydroelectric stations, oil refineries, and gas pipelines, begin to leak, malfunction, or explode. You witness the aftermath of one such disaster as you pass through a burning suburb in northern India. The entire village is charred black. No one saw the fire until it was inside their homes. Whole families died silently in their sleep, blind to the smoke curling beneath their beds. Hospitals collapse into scenes of pure horror. Nurses who were mid-procedure dropped their tools and never found them again. Oxygen lines tangled, heart monitors went unanswered. New patients wandered in but were never recorded. Soon, many became tombs of the forgotten as the sick and the blind starved to death beside still working machines. You step inside a hospital lobby in Chicago and feel the dry crunch of scattered syringes and broken wheelchairs beneath your feet. The silence is suffocating. Somewhere, a ventilator hums aimlessly, its patient long gone. In the absence of structure, panic gives birth to tribalism. Groups form around sound leaders, those with the loudest voices or clearest instructions. But without sight, power becomes primitive. The strongest, not the wisest, lead. You find yourself in the outskirts of Paris, where a makeshift camp operates by voice alone. A man known only as the signal broadcasts commands from the roof of a burned-out museum, instructing the blind to form food lines, to march in sequence, to clap 3 times when lost. Those who disobey are abandoned or punished. No one has seen him, but they believe in his voice. Fear makes people loyal. In cities like Tokyo, where silence was once golden, the loss of vision turns precision into chaos. Subways become tombs, trains idle underground, with hundreds inside, too afraid to leave. You walk along a subway platform, your hand brushing the wall, as the sounds of coughing and soft sobbing drift from the darkness of train cars. Some people refuse to exit, believing the world outside is worse. Others die on the tracks, trying to find their way back. Above ground, the once bustling neighborhoods are frozen. Shopkeepers still sit behind counters. They still wait for customers, but none will come. Their internal clocks are broken. Meals are missed. Time loses meaning. You find a man counting the seconds out loud, using them to remember where he is in the day. He loses track after 184 and starts over from 1. The air has changed too. It is no longer just a carrier of scent and sound. It is the enemy. Every breath you take feels like a gamble. You have no way to detect if the pathogen is present here, or if you are already infected and simply living on borrowed time. Birds no longer sing. They crash into windows. The sky, once filled with planes, now hangs silent. Satellites, still orbiting above, continue to record data, but with no one left to analyze it, they simply spin in vain. In rural areas, the breakdown is slower, but no less deadly. Farmers abandon their fields. Crops die. Livestock scatter or starve. You walk through a farm in Iowa where the cows have broken free of their pens and wandered onto highways. You hear their low, confused moans in the distance, echoing through the cornfields. There is no one left to herd them. The machines that fed them have stopped. Water pumps no longer work. Insects thrive. Rats multiply. Nature begins reclaiming the planet faster than anyone expected. The blindness is not just physical, it is social, psychological, existential. Without the ability to see, people begin to forget what things looked like. Landmarks are recalled in fragments. Faces become slippery ghosts in memory. Color becomes a story you are told rather than a truth you experience. Children who were only partially verbal before the event grow up without ever seeing their own parents' faces. They cannot point, draw, or describe. Their understanding of the world is built entirely on touch and sound. And yet, in this sea of collapse, something strange begins to stir. A new kind of communication emerges. People start tapping surfaces, clicking their tongues, using rhythmic claps to echolocate. They are not as effective as bats, but they are learning. Language shifts, words shorten, descriptions grow simpler. The world is reduced to distance, heat, and noise. You meet a man who navigates by dragging a stick with bells, another who counts every step between rooms. In the void left by vision, innovation tries to grow. But for now, the cities are graveyards with echoes. Society has stumbled into a pit it cannot climb out of. You understand now why you will not survive. Because even if you avoid death by accident or violence, you will slowly unravel. The mind is not built for this kind of darkness. You do not live in it. You dissolve in it. But not everyone is dissolving. Some have begun to rebuild not through sight, but through sound. In the next chapter, we will witness the rise of the hearing empire, a new order built by those who were blind long before the rest of the world joined them. You find yourself far from the dead cities now, deep in the reclaimed highlands of what was once northern Italy. The road here was treacherous, navigated by nothing but vibrations and distant rhythmic sounds left behind as auditory breadcrumbs. You are led not by sight, but by a woman named Morella, born blind, who now commands a caravan of survivors. She moves with astonishing precision. Her world is mapped by wind shifts, footfalls, and changes in air pressure. While the sighted stumble in endless confusion, she walks like a queen, and she is not alone. Here, in the ruins of civilization, a new social order is emerging, one that does not mourn the loss of vision, but thrives without it. The hearing empire, as it has come to be called, is less a political body and more a cultural uprising, built by the blind for the blind, out of the shattered fragments of a world addicted to sight. In the beginning, those born without vision were marginalized, pitied, often forced to conform to a sighted world. But when the airborne blindness swept across humanity like a silent wave, it was the blind who survived its psychological impact. They did not fall into despair. They adapted faster, organized sooner, and rebuilt with a clarity no longer tethered to light. You are guided into one of their first true cities, hidden in the valley below. It is not visible from above, not that it matters anymore. There are no lights, no signs, no windows. The entrance is a narrow passage carved through limestone, marked only by subtle chimes that hang from above, tuned to resonate with even the softest breeze. Inside, the city is a symphony. The streets are structured not by lines or signs, but by sound patterns. Tiles that make different notes when stepped on, walls embedded with pressure-sensitive tones, and overhead guides that release scents at intersections to signal direction. Every part of this city is designed for hearing, for feeling, for intuition. You are blindfolded for safety, not that your remaining sight would help. Citizens walk in perfectly timed rhythms, using echo pulses, sharp tongue clicks, or tapping rods to navigate. Children play by bouncing rubber balls that sing when they strike the walls. Public messages are delivered through harmonic pulses transmitted through the ground. where citizens can feel the vibrations in their bare feet. There are no screens, no books, no printed words. Language lives only in voices and memory. Yet the society functions with astounding efficiency. Commerce is conducted with textured tokens. Education is oral and tactile. Art is sculpted in clay, played in melody, or felt through kinetic sculptures suspended in vibrating air columns. In the heart of the city stands the sound tower, a vast vertical instrument made of metal, wood, and taut wire. It stretches 5 stories into the air and is played by teams of musicians whose job is not entertainment, but timekeeping. The tower rings out the day's progression in tones understood by all. Waking, working, eating, resting. It is part clock, part calendar, part citywide compass. The tower keeps everyone synchronized, even when disoriented. It replaces the sun. It replaces the clock face. In a world without light, time must sing. The leadership of the hearing empire consists mostly of those born blind, or who had long ago mastered echolocation and sensory mapping. Their understanding of the world, once seen as a limitation, is now the gold standard of human navigation. You sit in a council room made of curved wood, where every word bounces off the walls with exquisite clarity. Debates are held in absolute silence, with each person speaking only when a stone is passed to them, its texture guiding the next speaker. No voices talk over one another. Harmony is not just cultural, it is architectural. You meet historians here who remember the sighted world, not through books, but through oral tradition. They describe images like myths, comparing them to dreams long forgotten. Color is no longer relevant. They speak instead of frequency, weight, and texture. Vision to them was a flaw, a crutch, a world of illusions. The eye sees too much, one says. It distracts, it deceives, but the ear, the hand, the skin, they do not lie. Their philosophy is simple. Humans were never meant to rely on a single sense so deeply. The blindness has reset the balance. They are not rebuilding what was lost. They are building what should have always been. But the hearing empire is not utopia. With its rise come challenges. Sound becomes both a necessity and a weapon. Thieves mimic call signs to mislead others. Acoustic traps are laid for outsiders. Conflicts erupt with rival survivor groups who resist the blind order, preferring to live in solitary enclaves and primitive superstition. The hearing empire, while coordinated, is paranoid. Outsiders are often refused entry unless trained in their methods. You are tested before each threshold. Walk 30 steps without error. Identify 3 distinct frequencies. Repeat a coded phrase in perfect pitch. Fail, and you are turned away. Inside the city, you are given an initiation, taught to click your tongue in patterns to detect distance. You practice listening to echoes off objects of different density. Wood sounds softer. Metal returns a sharp ping. Fabric swallows sound. Within days, your brain begins to remap itself. You can feel walls before you touch them. You hear footsteps coming around corners. You start to understand what the new citizens mean when they say they see with their ears. But adaptation is slow for those who once depended on vision. Most survivors from the sighted world do not make it through initiation. Their minds break under the pressure of total dependence on sound. You hear of one man who walked into a pit believing he was safe. Another screamed for days because he could not stand the constant need to interpret every vibration. Your guide, Morella, tells you that it takes years to truly live like this, and most people no longer have years to spare. The hearing empire has plans. Their engineers, blind from birth, are designing new machines that function on sound alone. Farming tools guided by echo pings, vehicles that hum their location to others, homes that shift shape based on daily temperature changes announced through tone. They are not waiting for sight to return. They do not believe it ever will. They call this time the resonance, the age where human beings must resonate with the world, not dominate it. You ask them if they hope to see again. They pause. Then one answers, no. The world is quieter now, and we finally know how to listen. You spend weeks among them, learning how to live with no visual map. It is exhausting, it is enlightening, and it is a warning. Because if you cannot let go of the need to see, you will never survive the new world. The hearing empire is not built for nostalgia. It is built for evolution. It is not for those who wait for the lights to come back on. It is for those who have accepted that they never will. Yet, outside the reach of these harmonized cities, in the wild shadows of collapsed nations, darker forces are awakening. In the next section, we will explore the predators of the blind earth, those who thrive not through cooperation, but through exploitation and fear. It is midnight, or so you guess, though in this world, darkness is eternal, and time no longer wears a face. You are miles from the safety of the hearing empire, navigating what remains of southern France. The roads are fractured, street signs are meaningless, and the silence, once a comfort in your early days of blindness, has become an omen. There are no birds here, no cicadas, no wind rustling leaves, just a stillness that presses on your chest like a weight, and then a sound, a footstep, deliberate, slow, not yours. Predators have always existed on the fringes of civilization, but in the post-sight world, they thrive in ways that defy the instincts of the civilized. When the blindness first spread, some individuals adapted not to survive together, but to hunt alone. They learned the patterns of confusion, the hesitations in a person's voice, the slight tremble in a step that betrayed uncertainty, and they exploited it. At first, they preyed on the vulnerable, isolated families, lone travelers, blind children, separated from groups. But as the chaos deepened, their confidence grew. They formed roaming packs, operating with sound codes and mimicry. Some call them eaters, others echo thieves. But most survivors know them simply by the sound of their arrival. A slow, 3-tap rhythm against stone or metal, followed by silence. You hide behind the wreckage of a train car, holding your breath. Across the overgrown tracks, you hear it again, tap, 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 then silence. A minute passes, then laughter, hollow and distorted. Someone whistles, mocking, drawn out. It is not joy, it is bait. These are not the survivors who built society from the wreckage. These are those who embraced the fall. Their world is not structured. It is predatory, opportunistic, violent. They no longer believe in rebuilding. They believe only in consumption, control, and the thrill of domination. In a world where no one can see their face, they use scent markers to track territory, leaving foul-smelling trails of oil, blood, and human waste around their camps. They wear bells with missing clappers to confuse echolocation. They throw stones to mislead. They capture the blind, not for rescue, but for sport. You have heard of their rituals, pit fights in complete darkness, where they release captives into collapsed arenas and listen as they scream, stumble, and die. They wear masks of bone and metal, not to conceal, but to amplify fear. In this new world, fear is power, and sound is weaponized into horror. One of their signature tricks is voice mimicry. They record voices of survivors, especially those asking for help, and play them back through directional speakers to lure others in. You witnessed this firsthand. A man's voice, desperate and kind, begging for help from a ruined cathedral. When a group of survivors approached, he disappeared. Moments later, the sound repeated, identical, with the same inflection. It was a loop, a trap. When one woman called out in response, she was taken. Her scream echoed only once, then silence. You learned then that responding, even out of kindness, can be fatal. Some predators were blind before the outbreak. Some are former soldiers, trained in stealth. Others are feral children, raised in the chaos, who never knew anything but darkness. They move silently, eat with their hands, and sleep in makeshift nests of metal and bone. They do not fear the dark because they were born into it. To them, the collapse of the visual world is not a tragedy, it is freedom, a reset. They believe the sighted had their time and wasted it. Now, it is the age of the hunters. You travel with a small group for safety now. Each of you holds a rope, spaced 3 meters apart, to move in synchronized steps. No one speaks. Instead, you use finger taps on the rope to communicate. 1 for stop, 2 for danger, 3 for turn. At night, you sleep in shifts, never alone. You use cans with pebbles as motion alarms. Still, it is not enough. In one town, you return from a water search to find your camp disturbed. The pots are overturned, your companion's rope cut, and the silence is too perfect. You find no bodies, no blood, just a faint whistle in the distance, echoing through the empty homes like a lullaby sung by the dead. The rise of predation has also shifted the moral compass of survivors. Some choose to become predators themselves, not out of cruelty, but survival. Food is scarce, water must be scavenged, and when your own senses betray you, it is easier to take than to build. You pass through a village that once tried to form a commune. Now, its central fountain is filled with bones. The houses are booby-trapped with sharp wires and broken glass, designed to maim the unaware. You almost lose your fingers on a window frame strung with piano wire. The entire place has been abandoned for months, yet the traps remain. A final statement. This world is no longer built for mercy. Animals have changed too. The natural predators of Earth, long reliant on stealth and surprise, have taken advantage of the human collapse. Packs of dogs roam highways, no longer tame. They hunt by scent and coordination. You witness one such pack take down a man who had made camp inside an overturned bus. He never had a chance. The dogs worked together, silent, flanking him from 3 directions. By the time he realized he was not alone, they were already inside. And then there are the other things. Not human, not entirely animal. Rumors whispered through broken radios and cracked headsets. Something that mimics voices too perfectly. Something that taps in impossible rhythms. Something that stalks in absolute silence and leaves only piles of twisted shoes. You dismiss them at first as fear-induced myths, but then you hear the 3 taps, once from a place you just passed, then again ahead of you, and no one else is near. Predation in this world is not just a physical threat, it is psychological. It makes you mistrust every sound, question every movement, hesitate when you should run. And in blindness, hesitation is fatal. You begin to doubt your instincts. You sleep with your back to a wall, knife in hand, even among allies. You speak less, move slower, and begin to forget what safety ever felt like. This is how the world unravels, not in fire or war, but in whispered footsteps and the quiet horror of not knowing what waits around the next corner. But not everyone has succumbed to fear. In the deepest caverns of Earth, far below the chaos, survivors are building something new. Beneath cities, beneath soil, beneath sound itself, the blind are forging eco-civilizations. In the next chapter, we descend into these underground sanctuaries and explore the birth of a society that thrives not in light, but in total, calculated silence. You are now in the ruins of what was once a thriving, mid-sized city, perhaps in the American Midwest, perhaps somewhere in Eastern Europe. You cannot be certain anymore. The air is stale, the sounds hollow. You are guided into a government building that still bears the remnants of civilization. A faded flag draped over a marble podium, papers scattered across the floor, and overturned chairs in tight, controlled rows. This was once a courthouse. It is now a place of judgment, but not the kind based on laws or evidence. Here, truth is a ghost, and in a world without sight, trust has become the rarest and most fragile currency in existence. You are invited to witness a trial. The accused is a man who stands silently with his hands bound. The jury, if it can be called that, is a ring of blind survivors, some former judges, others just respected elders, sitting in absolute stillness. The only voices in the room belong to the accused, the accuser, and a translator tasked with relaying tactile signals for clarity. There is no visual evidence, no security footage, no fingerprints, no witnesses with unshakable accounts. Everyone involved is blind. The case hinges entirely on voice, memory, and trust. The crime, a theft, or perhaps an assault, maybe even murder. The story changes depending on who you believe. One survivor claims the man lured her into an alley by pretending to be her brother. Another says she misidentified his voice. There are no physical injuries that can be conclusively verified, no fingerprints that can be matched. The accused maintains his innocence, but his voice shakes, and in this world, a tremble is dangerous. Confidence is as vital as truth, and trust is easily manipulated when sight no longer offers reassurance. The council debates in whispers. No one raises their voice. Each word is weighed for tone, pacing, emotional consistency. A voice that cracks could be guilt, or it could be fear. No one can tell. You sit in silence as hours pass. There is no gavel, no final pronouncement. Instead, the council stands, walks in a circle around the accused, and one by one, each places a hand on his shoulder. Then they walk away. He stands, alone, shaking. A few minutes later, he is escorted outside and left at the edge of the community's sound perimeter. Exile, a soft death sentence. No one speaks again of him. This is how society now attempts justice, with intuition and guesswork. In a world without vision, everything that held trust together collapses. Facial expressions are gone. Eye contact is impossible. Contracts cannot be signed. IDs cannot be verified. Money no longer exists in tangible forms. Even voices can be stolen, mimicked by those with trained tongues or recording devices. It is not long before entire communities become paranoid fortresses, guarded more by suspicion than walls. You travel next to a settlement built in what used to be a university campus. It is large, organized, and well-fed, but its social fabric is shredded. Every interaction is filtered through intense scrutiny. You must pass several vocal authentication tests just to enter, repeat a phrase in perfect pitch, identify the sound of an approaching tone, even match a rhythm pattern used by that group. Inside, no one talks openly. Conversations are hushed and brief. You watch two people trade water rations, each holding their canteen, while a third party verifies the weight and sound. Trust here is not freely given. It is rationed like food. Romantic relationships have become almost impossible. Without sight, intimacy relies solely on voice, scent, and touch. But trust erodes these connections before they can form. Is the person who speaks to you at night the same one you met that morning? Are the words genuine or mimicked? A stolen accent, a replayed loop. In many places, people have begun to speak in customized dialects, private linguistic quirks, like inflections or rhythmic patterns, that make their voices harder to replicate. But even that is not foolproof. You meet a man who lost his entire family after a mimic used their voices to lure him into an ambush. He no longer speaks except in clicks and knocks. He does not sleep near others. Children raised in this world do not know what honesty feels like. With no visual cues, they learn early to lie with their voices, to manipulate with tones, and perform innocence. You meet a 10-year-old girl who communicates entirely in riddles. Her caretakers say she does not trust direct language anymore. She assumes everything said plainly is a trick. It is the only defense she has ever known. When asked if she misses seeing, she answers, "What is seeing? Is that when you know someone is real?" Then she laughs, and the sound is more chilling than joyful. Religious groups fracture, too. In a world where no one can verify miracles or sacred objects, faith either deepens into zealotry or withers into despair. Some sects believe the blindness was divine punishment. Others preach that trust must now be reserved only for the divine, since man has proven too fallible. But even within temples, chaos brews. Priests are accused of speaking false scripture. Sermons are mimicked to control followers. In one town, a high priest is found tied to the altar, beaten nearly to death by his congregation after they suspected he had led them into spiritual ruin. They had no proof, only a whispered voice they thought was his, instructing them to abandon the food stores. Barter systems crumble as people cheat weights and swap mislabeled goods. One settlement bans all trades unless overseen by a verifier, a person trained to detect lies in breath, inflection, and heartbeat. But verifiers can be corrupted too. In another place, a verifier is caught selling false certifications of identity, allowing raiders to infiltrate safe zones and wipe them out from the inside. You find a survivor from one of those towns. She tells you the last thing she heard before the massacre began was her mother's voice calling her name, but it was not her mother. It was someone else. She ran toward it anyway. Even in the rare pockets of stability, the atmosphere is suffocating. Trust is no longer a bridge between people. It is a liability. Communities teach new rules. Speak only when necessary. Never assume, and verify every voice twice. New phrases replace old greetings. Are you who I think you are? Or give me your code. Relationships become transactional. Friendships are scheduled. Love is negotiated in advance through trusted intermediaries. Emotion is dangerous now because it can be faked. As you continue your journey, the realization sinks in. It is not the blindness that kills societies. It is the loss of shared certainty. Vision, for all its flaws, was a foundation of mutual recognition. Without it, the entire architecture of civilization wobbles. When no one can confirm who anyone is, reality itself becomes fluid. And in that fluidity, predators, manipulators, and liars flourish. Humanity is not just blind, it is lost, suspicious, fragmented, alone. But some have found a way to rebuild, not through trust, but through design. Deep beneath the Earth's surface, survivors have created underground civilizations guided not by belief, but by structure, geometry, and sound. In the next section, we descend into the echo cities, where blindness has become the blueprint for a new kind of engineered survival. You descend into the earth through a long spiral tunnel carved into solid rock. The air grows cooler, drier. Every part of this descent has been designed to respond acoustically, not visually. You are entering one of the first fully realized echo cities, an underground civilization constructed for and entirely by the blind. Above, the world fractures in paranoia and chaos. Below, in silence and calculation, something new is growing. Your guide is a woman named Yara. She wears soft-soled boots and moves with a short walking staff covered in tiny bells. She never speaks unless necessary. In this place, silence is sacred, not for fear, but for precision. You enter the city through a large chamber that acts as an acoustic dome. A single click at the center creates hundreds of distinct echoes, bouncing from columns, furniture, tunnels, and chambers beyond. This is how residents navigate, by sitting by memory, by rhythm. You feel your perception beginning to rewire. Sight is meaningless here. Even light sources are non-existent. There are no lanterns, no fire pits, no screens. Everything is constructed in materials that reflect sound differently. Rough stone walls, soft moss carpets, vibrating copper panels. Every inch of this place is designed to be heard, not seen. The buildings themselves are shaped like instruments. The door to a kitchen makes a hollow drum sound when knocked. The entrance to the living quarters resonates like a xylophone. People here do not need names for locations. They hum them. The city stretches for miles underground, forming vast, multi-layered corridors that mimic natural cave systems. Yara leads you past communal areas where groups sit in circles, speaking in patterned claps. They share news through rhythmic code. Others knead dough into food bricks marked by scent, shape, and touch. You walk through markets where trades are conducted in total quiet. Weights are confirmed by calibrated plates that sing at specific tones when the proper mass is placed upon them. Children run past you without fear, their feet bare, their ears finely tuned. They click their tongues to echolocate with eerie accuracy. They navigate complex obstacle courses made of rope, water, and suspended stone without touching anything. These are not children crippled by the world's collapse. These are children designed for it, raised in darkness, shaped by echo, and unshackled from the anxiety that paralyzed those who lost sight as adults. You are taken to the city's heart, a central navigation chamber called the Resonance Hall. It is a vast sphere carved with geometric ridges and tunnels. This space serves as both meeting ground and directional hub. You stand in the center and listen. One step forward produces a short, sharp echo. 2 steps left, and the echo deepens. Each vector of the room has a signature sound. People here walk without hesitation because this room tells them exactly where they are by how it sings back to them. Power comes from geothermal vents deep beneath the surface. Water is pulled through sonic-guided channels. Gardens grow with no light, nourished by heat, fungus, and engineered mosses that respond to vibrations. Even the tools here are acoustic. You see a device that maps topography by emitting low pulses and recording the bounce patterns. The results are not printed. They are played back as tones that reveal slope, texture, and distance to the trained ear. You realize that knowledge in this society is no longer written. It is performed, learned through rhythm, stored in song. Their laws are encoded as chants. Their history is a long ballad, passed orally from council to council. When disagreements occur, disputes are resolved in what they call the circle of vibration. 2 individuals enter a padded chamber and express their cases by tone, cadence, and argument, while a council outside listens not to the words, but to the intent beneath them. Verdicts are handed down not through punishment, but through redirectionists signing the guilty, a new sound identity, a new role, and in some cases, temporary exile into silent zones where no sound is allowed. Security is handled through pattern recognition. Every resident has a unique walking rhythm, a distinct set of clicks and taps. Outsiders can be detected within minutes. When you enter a chamber not calibrated to your sound print, the floor vibrates in warning. Should you proceed, sonic pulses will disrupt your balance. You have no idea where the sensors are. You hear no alarms, but you are certain this city is listening to you at all times. Despite the control, the mood here is not oppressive. It is peaceful, meditative. You meet elders who have not spoken in weeks, choosing to communicate only through drum taps and chorded harmonics. They believe this silence sharpens the soul. You walk through a garden where wind chimes made of bone, metal, and shell gently whisper as the air moves past. These are not decorations, they are guides. Each chime represents a doorway, a turning point, a direction. Even in rest, this city hums with intention. Of course, it is not without its tensions. Resources are scarce. New arrivals strain the system. Not everyone adapts. You are taken to a holding area called the stillness, where those who cannot harmonize are kept. They are not prisoners, but not yet citizens. Some scream into the void, unable to handle the sensory deprivation. Others sit perfectly still, trying to train their hearing, their mind, their patience. Only some emerge. What strikes you most about the echo cities is how little they care about returning to the surface. Most consider the outside world to be toxic, unpredictable, and spiritually tainted. Some believe the blindness was not a disaster, but a divine correction, a reset of perception. The leaders of this society, known as the keepers of tone, speak rarely, but when they do, their words ripple like thunder. Above, the world fell because it saw too much. Below, we hear everything. You are allowed to stay for several days. In that time, you begin to map the city through memory and sound. You develop instincts. You start to anticipate turns, recognize patterns, even sense people approaching before they speak. But as your senses evolve, so does your anxiety, because the longer you stay, the more alien the idea of sight becomes. You begin to forget colors. You struggle to recall faces. Your dreams are no longer visual, They are auditory tapestries, woven with echoes and vibrations. You begin to understand what it means to live fully without light. And yet, even in this sanctuary, fear remains. Because no matter how deep you go, no matter how carefully designed the city is, the pathogen is still out there. The air above still churns with blindness. And somewhere, the predators of the surface have begun digging. The echo cities cannot remain secret forever. But while these underground societies adapt and evolve, others cling to hope through faith and fanaticism. In the next section, we rise to the surface once more to witness the emergence of cults, prophets, and the spiritual wars of a world without sight. You return to the surface, where silence no longer signals safety, but tension. The cities you once knew are now cathedrals of whispers and forgotten names. Somewhere in the American Southwest, across a dust-covered plain, where highways are barely visible beneath sand and broken glass, you come upon the ruins of a desert megachurch. Its steeple collapsed long ago, but its parking lot is full. The cars are motionless, many out of fuel, abandoned by those who walked the final miles. Their doors hang open like mouths mid-prayer. You are not alone. Dozens of people sit cross-legged in the sand, facing the remnants of the sanctuary, heads tilted upward. Their eyes, useless though they are, remain wide open, waiting for something. This is one of many such cults that have formed in the wake of global blindness. Without sight, humanity has grown desperate for meaning. Some believe the darkness is divine punishment. Others, a necessary trial before transcendence. And still others follow voices, literal ones, that guide them to gather, wait, chant, and obey. You are welcomed into the camp with eerie hospitality. No one asks your name. No one checks your belongings. They only ask a single question. Have you seen the light? You are told of a prophet named Solon, once a televangelist, now the voice of a spiritual movement spreading across the wasteland. Solon's sermons are broadcast not by screens, but through low-frequency radio bursts that reach thousands of kilometers. His followers believe he has not lost his sight, but rather gained a new one, an inner vision untouched by the pathogen. They believe the blindness is a trial by fire, and that only through faith and sacrifice can the second light be revealed. Inside the church ruins, rituals unfold. Followers crawl on hands and knees toward what used to be the altar, whispering mantras that mimic the sounds of sunlight, sibilant tones, gentle hisses, rising pitches. You witness a purification where a man voluntarily gouges his eyes with ash-coated fingertips, despite already being blind. They call it removing the veil. His screams are followed by cheers. Others weep with joy, claiming he has ascended. Not all are so radical. Other cults have emerged with softer philosophies. One group in Eastern Africa chants only at dusk and dawn, believing the sun still speaks to them if they listen long enough. Another sect in the Andes carves stone towers that they tap with bone mallets, interpreting the echoes as divine messages. These are the peaceful ones, guided by rhythm and reverence. But the most dangerous factions are those led by the false prophets men and women who exploit the darkness for control. You cross paths with one such group in a ruined metro tunnel beneath Istanbul. Their leader, known only as the Opal, claims to have been born blind and chosen by a celestial force. He does not speak to followers directly. Instead, his voice is projected from hidden speakers, altered with filters to sound inhuman, distant. His people obey without question. They live in perfect silence, moving only when instructed. They believe that noise offends the gods, and that the blindness is punishment for a world too loud. Outsiders who enter their zone and make a sound are never heard from again. Another group, the Order of the Shard, has taken a violent path. They believe light must be reclaimed, not awaited. They experiment with ancient machines, scavenging old power plants, and reactivating failed solar grids. They have developed crude, weaponized bursts of light, bright enough to blind anyone still partially sighted, or disorient the blind with sudden heat and noise. Their temples glow briefly each night before plunging back into darkness. They call these flashes the lightning psalms. You visit one of their outposts and hear the stories of captured heretics, people who refused to believe, who questioned the nature of the prophet's gifts. These dissenters are subjected to the test of radiance, a chamber where sonic vibrations are tuned to overload the mind. Some emerge in silence, others never leave. You ask the leader, a man named Ran, what they hope to accomplish. His answer is simple. We will bring light back by burning everything else away. But not all false prophets claim divinity. Some claim science. In the American Northeast, you are taken to a bunker, posing as a medical sanctuary. Here, a woman named Dr. Helena Banks leads a cult of rationalists who worship the last recorded image before the blindness. A satellite photo of Earth. They call it the final frame. They believe that sight can be restored through mental discipline. Followers wear headbands that emit low pulses meant to train the brain to revisualize the world. They walk around with blank tablets, pretending to read them. They greet each other by describing made-up images, using vivid imagination in place of memory. At first, it seems harmless, but you later discover that dissenters are denied food, that those who fail to see after 30 days are considered spiritually dead. They vanish soon after. What connects all these cults, peaceful or fanatical, is their hunger, not for sight, but for meaning. Blindness is not just the loss of vision, it is the loss of certainty, of control, of personal truth. In a world where no one can confirm what lies in front of them, belief becomes the only compass. You see people following voices into ruins, trusting strangers who whisper promises of light. You see crowds gathered around makeshift pulpits, chanting to recordings on loop. You see families torn apart because one member chose faith while another demanded reason. You begin to wonder, in a world without vision, how do we distinguish a prophet from a madman, a guide from a manipulator? You meet a man in the wreckage of a school who claims he used to be a false prophet. He mimicked voices for power, convinced people he could lead them to safety. He made up visions of glowing cities and hidden sanctuaries. I lied, he confesses, but they needed me to. Without me, they had nothing to follow. When asked if he regrets it, he pauses and says, I still hear them at night, calling my name. In this new era, belief replaces law. Myth replaces science. Power flows not through clarity, but confidence. The loudest voice, the most certain tone, the most comforting lie. These are the new currencies of control. The world is now ruled not by governments or armies, but by echoes of faith and the deep, hollow spaces where truth used to live. Transition, but the world is not done changing. As years pass, a new generation is born, one that never knew light, never feared the dark, and never mourned the loss of vision. In the next section, we step into their world and witness how the children of the new sense are redefining what it means to be human. It is now the year 2043, 14 years since the first breath of Airborne. Blindness swept across the earth and silenced its skies. The world has reshaped itself, not by rebuilding what was lost, but by growing in directions no one expected. You stand in a valley, once part of rural Vietnam, where the soil is fertile and the ruins of old buildings rest like fossils among gardens of fungus and moss. And among this quiet rebirth, you hear them before you feel them. Dozens of children laughing, clicking, tapping their surroundings with sticks and stones, creating a language that is half rhythm, half instinct. These are not the lost. These are not the grieving. These are the children of the new sense, born entirely into darkness. This generation has never seen light. They have never stared at a sunset, never read a book, never watched a screen. And yet they move with grace and awareness that seems almost supernatural. You watch a child run full speed through an obstacle course of trees and wire, guided only by the tones bouncing off nearby wood and stone. He does not slow down. He does not collide. His ears twitch like sonar dishes. His feet land with the precision of a practiced dancer. He is blind, but he is not limited. He is optimized. The adults here no longer teach reading or writing. Instead, education revolves around environmental sensing, tonal recognition, and memory conditioning. Students learn to identify 100 distinct types of ground by texture and sound. They study wind direction by listening to the hum of leaves. They memorize spatial layouts and recreate them with ropes, knots, and coded taps. History is taught through oral songs. Mathematics is communicated through beats and pause lengths. The brain adapts when vision is not only absent, but irrelevant. You sit with a 10-year-old girl named Lean, who has never known what the sky looks like. She asks you to describe it. You struggle to find words, and when you try, it's blue, sometimes orange, with white clouds. She laughs. "What is blue?" she asks. You fall silent. In this moment, you understand something profound. This generation does not miss sight. They never had it, never needed it, never imagined it. And because of that, they have evolved free of the longing, the confusion, the trauma that haunted their parents. Neuroscientists who survived the collapse have studied these children where possible. Brain scans reveal something astonishing. Their auditory cortex is larger, more active, more complex. They process acoustic information with a speed and precision far beyond previous human limits. Some even show signs of developing rudimentary echolocation abilities, not learned tricks, but true sensory rewiring. When one boy is asked to navigate a maze, he does so blindfolded, then again with his ears plugged. He struggles more with sound deprivation than with the absence of vision. He no longer thinks in visuals. He maps the world in patterns, pressure, and pitch. But this new humanity is not without its challenges. The older generation often struggles to communicate with these children. Language has begun to drift. Cited metaphors no longer make sense. Phrases like "I see what you mean" or "look over there" are being replaced with "I hear you deeply, and let me echo that." Written laws, signage, and documents are disappearing. In their place are sound codes, physical symbols, textured documents read by touch and memorized through rhythm. It is not just that the children are different. The entire concept of human interaction is mutating around them. In a school-like structure formed out of clay and stone, you observe a session where children listen to art. The walls are embedded with strings and hollow tubes that produce different notes when touched. The children walk along the wall, creating harmonies. To them, this is painting, this is sculpture, this is the closest thing to expression they know, and it is done entirely without color or image. One girl creates a long, low vibration that causes the room to hum. She smiles and says, "That's what a mountain sounds like." You realize that, in a way, she is right. The idea of seeing is no longer central. Feeling, hearing, vibrating, these are the new pillars of creativity. Some of these children are beginning to form communities of their own. You travel to a circular village constructed without corners, built entirely by touch. There are no walls in the traditional sense, only sound partitions made from different materials: rubber, wood, metal, cloth. The layout is designed so that every footstep echoes back a slightly different tone. Each person knows where they are simply by walking. These are not primitive settlements. They are advanced in ways you did not anticipate. Communication here is faster than speech. Complex conversations are conducted with tapping, foot placement, and breath modulation. Outsiders find it incomprehensible. You do too. Perhaps the most jarring moment comes when you ask a group of these children whether they would choose to see if given the chance. Most say no. Some are curious but cautious. A few outright reject the idea. One boy tells you, "Why would I give up the world I understand for one I cannot control?" Another adds, "People who see always argue about what they saw. No one argues about what they heard." They do not see blindness as a curse. They see it as a refinement, a way to strip away distractions and focus on what matters: connection, presence, memory. These children have no war for territory. Their homes are defined by movement, not borders. They do not build monuments. They build resonance chambers to pass on knowledge. There is no government, only keepers of rhythm, elders who remember key tonal sequences and ensure cultural continuity. Disputes are settled by communal silence. The first one to break the silence admits fault. It is not humiliating, it is cleansing. You begin to wonder if these children are still human as we once defined the term. Or are they the beginning of a new subspecies, Homo sonus, the sound-born? Without sight, they will never crave visual control. They will never design weapons that rely on target acquisition. They will never use facial expression to manipulate. Their morality may be purer, their culture more unified, their thoughts less clouded by illusion. Or perhaps, you worry, they will become so alien to the remaining sighted elders that conflict is inevitable. Because for all their evolution, they still live in a world haunted by the old. The ruins around them still whisper in shape and structure. The radios still crackle with recorded voices of the sighted dead. Sometimes these children gather to listen, not to understand, but to remember that there was once another way to live. When asked if they mourn the past, most shake their heads. "We do not mourn," one says. "We only echo." But as these children rise with new senses and philosophies, the last hope of sight's return rests in the hands of those still desperate to reverse it. In the next chapter, we enter the final global experiment, where science, desperation, and hubris collide in one last attempt to bring light back to the blind world. High in the Arctic Circle, beneath the frozen bones of what was once a global research station, a final scientific outpost hums softly beneath the ice. It is called Helix Deep, buried 3 kilometers underground and powered by geothermal reactors. shielded from the airborne pathogen by layers of vacuum-sealed tunnels and negative pressure barriers. You arrive here not through cities or roads, those no longer exist, but through memory and luck, guided by an old radio signal repeating coordinates in Morse code. You were told Helix Deep holds the last hope for restoring human sight. What you find instead is a laboratory of exhausted minds, hollow promises, and one final gamble on a dying world. The researchers who remain here are the elite survivors of a fallen scientific age. Neurologists, nanotechnologists, bioengineers. They have not seen daylight in over a decade. Some have lost their vision to the pathogen. Others cling to it behind tightly sealed masks and air purifiers that buzz like dying wasps. Their leader, Dr. Roshan Varma, is a soft-spoken man whose eyes never meet yours directly. "You are just in time," he whispers, as if speaking too loudly might shatter what little hope they have left. He takes you into the Project Ian chamber. This is their final effort, a synthetic vision restoration system that bypasses the infected visual cortex entirely. The idea is simple in theory, absurd in scale. Using nanowires implanted directly into the optic nerves and rerouted through a secondary neural network implanted in the temporal lobe. The team hopes to transmit sight in the form of interpreted environmental data, translated into simplified image patterns. In essence, a digital third eye grafted into the mind. You stand before the machine. It resembles a cross between a dentist's chair and an exoskeleton, surrounded by spider-like arms ending in surgical needles. The test subject lies still. His head is shaved, his face expressionless, his skin marked by surgical entry points. His name is Emil. He has been blind for 14 years, since the initial outbreak. He volunteered for this without hesitation. If it works, Dr. Varma says, he will be the first man in over a decade to see the world again. Not as it was, but something close. You watch as the process begins. Microfilaments snake into Emil's skull. Electrical pulses tick like distant thunder. A robotic voice counts down the neural interface synchronization. 10, 9, 8. You hold your breath. 7, 6, 5. The lights dim. 4, 3, 2, 1. Then silence. Emil's eyes open, but not with recognition, not with joy. They flicker, twitch, then freeze. He begins to shake. His mouth opens in a silent scream. The machine hums louder. Monitors flash red. The neural pathways, unable to handle the foreign data, begin to crossfire. His brain is receiving too much, too fast. Not images, something else. You hear the word repeated again and again across the monitor's speakers. Corrupted, corrupted, corrupted. Emil begins to laugh, a high, broken sound. He cries out, I can see the sound. Then he convulses, foam spilling from his lips. The machine powers down. Emil is still breathing, but he is no longer conscious. A scan shows hyperactivity in the dream center of his brain. He is not awake. He is trapped somewhere between vision and madness. Dr. Varma buries his face in his hands. It was supposed to be controlled, limited, structured. He shakes his head, but the brain, after so long in darkness, devours input like a starving animal. It did not process the light. It hallucinated it. Over the following days, the team tries again and again. 10 more volunteers, 10 more failures. Some scream until their vocal cords rupture. Others become catatonic. One suffers a stroke. The pattern becomes clear. The longer the brain has lived in blindness, the more unstable it becomes when reintroduced to visual data. The neurons do not simply reconnect, they rebel, they fabricate, they distort. The restored sight becomes surreal, flashes of color, imagined movement, false shapes. One subject insisted he saw angels with knives for eyes. Another begged for the lights to be removed, claiming they were inside his skull, burning. It becomes clear that the human mind has adapted to neuroplasticity, the brain's gift of evolution, has rewritten itself entirely. For most, sight is no longer a dormant function, it is an alien invasion. The team realizes a hard truth. Even if they perfect the device, there may be no one left who can receive it safely. The human species has passed a threshold. The rewiring is complete. Sight, as we once knew it, may now be lethal. And yet, Dr. Varma is not finished. He invites you to witness one final experiment. This time, there is no human subject. Instead, they upload Emil's last visual data, his distorted neural feed, into a quantum simulation. You sit before the screen as it flickers to life, unsure what you will see. The footage begins, not in images, but impressions, shapes of impossible geometry, fractals that breathe, light with sound, shadow that speaks, a memory of motion, not motion itself. You realize you are watching what Emil saw. It is not the world. It is a nightmare filtered through forgotten neurons. This is not vision restored. It is consciousness cracked open and exposed. And yet you cannot look away. For a moment, you understand why the children of the New Age rejected sight, why the blind prophets built temples of silence, why those born after the collapse navigate by pulse and vibration. The world beyond vision is slower but purer, less illusion, more truth. And when you leave Helix Deep, you no longer desire to see. You no longer trust light. Dr. Varma does not follow you back to the surface. He remains in the lab, surrounded by the humming machines and the glowing data streams. Perhaps sight was always a burden, he murmurs. We stared at the world for centuries and learned so little. Maybe it is time we listen. You return to the wasteland above, back into the breathless dark. And as you walk alone, guided by footstep and echo, you understand why no one will survive the return of vision. Because sight, once lost, cannot be restored, not without losing the mind that learned to live without it. And now, as the final embers of sight fade from the world, only one truth remains. The earth belongs to the blind, and those who still dream of light will not survive its return. You have traveled through a world buried in darkness, where sight is not merely lost, it is punished. A world where blindness was not a symptom, but a signal, a hard reset of human evolution. You witnessed the fall of cities, the unraveling of trust, the rise of predators who weaponized silence, and the birth of eco-civilizations who turned sound into architecture. You saw how faith twisted into fanaticism, how memory distorted into madness, and how the youngest among us began to shape a new humanity without ever opening their eyes. And when science tried to bring back the light, it found only hallucinations, pain, and irreversible damage. The final attempt to restore vision did not awaken the world. It confirmed that the world no longer needed to be seen. In this timeline, survival did not belong to the strongest or the smartest. It belonged to the listeners, to those who embraced the silence, to those who stopped looking and started feeling. If you are one of the few who might have endured the early years, who learned to walk by echo, think by rhythm, and speak by vibration. You might have lasted longer than most, but make no mistake, you would not have survived the full transformation. Because survival in this world meant letting go of everything you were, your identity, your memories, your vision, your very self. And that is why, in this future, you will not survive. Now ask yourself, could you live in a world without vision? Not for a day, not for a month, but forever. Could you learn to trust without seeing, love without looking, lead without light? Or would your mind unravel with the rest? Comment below. Would you survive the era of airborne blindness? Or would you vanish the moment the sky went dark? And if you could restore sight, would you even dare? If this journey shook you, subscribe for more immersive glimpses into the terrifying futures and strange alternate worlds where survival demands more than strength. It demands transformation. And remember, sometimes what we call vision is just another illusion we are too afraid to lose.